Billionaire father pretends to be a cleaner to find his son a wife. The crystal champagne flute shattered against the marble floor of the penthouse, sending shards across Charles Whitmore's Italian leather shoes. But it wasn't the sound of breaking glass that made his heart race. It was the words his son had just screamed at him. "I'm done, Dad. Done." Nathan's voice echoed through the $40 million apartment, his face twisted with a pain that money couldn't fix. "Every single woman who walks into my life, they all want the same thing. The name, the bank account, the lifestyle." His laugh was bitter, hollow. "Never me." Charles watched his 27-year-old son pace like a caged animal, designer suit wrinkled, tie hanging loose. The latest heartbreak, a socialite named Victoria who'd been caught photographing Nathan's credit cards, had finally pushed Nathan over the edge. "Son, listen." "No." Nathan spun around, his eyes blazing with the kind of fury that comes from being used one too many times. "You know what she said when I confronted her. What did you expect, Nathan? Love." She actually laughed. Laughed. The silence that followed was deafening. Charles felt something crack inside his chest, not his ribs, but something deeper. His own heart, maybe. Because as he looked at Nathan, he saw himself 30 years ago. The same distrust, the same isolation, the same walls built so high that love couldn't climb over them. But Charles had found love once. Nathan's mother, Sarah, had seen past the fortune to the man beneath. And now she was gone, taken by cancer 5 years ago, leaving both men adrift in a sea of wealth that suddenly felt like an anchor dragging them down. "Maybe I should just accept it," Nathan whispered, his voice breaking. "Maybe love isn't meant for people like us. Maybe we're too damaged, too tainted by all this." He gestured around the opulent apartment. Artwork worth millions, views of the city that stretched for miles. Everything money could buy and nothing it couldn't. Charles stepped forward, crunching glass beneath his feet. "Your mother." "Mom was different." Nathan's voice cracked. "She was from a different time. Before social media, before everyone knew our net worth down to the penny. Before." He trailed off, but Charles knew what he meant. Before the loneliness became suffocating. That night, after Nathan left for his own apartment across town, Charles stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the city lights that twinkled like false promises. His reflection stared back, a 55-year-old man with silver temples and tired eyes, wearing a $10,000 suit that felt like a costume. He thought about Sarah, how she'd challenged him, made him laugh, seen through his carefully constructed facade to the man who just wanted to be loved for who he was, not what he owned. She'd been a librarian when they met, completely unimpressed by his wealth, more interested in his thoughts on the book she'd recommended. "How do I help him find what we had?" he whispered to her memory. And then, as if Sarah herself had whispered the answer, an idea began to form. Crazy, impossible, potentially disastrous, but maybe, just maybe, brilliant. Charles pulled out his phone and dialed his assistant. "Margaret, I need you to clear my schedule for the next 3 months. All of it, sir? Even the board meeting with everything." He paused, his reflection becoming clearer in the window. "And Margaret, give me the number for Elite Staffing Services. I need to apply for a job." The confusion in Margaret's voice was palpable. "Sir, I don't understand. Apply for a job? You own 17 companies." Charles smiled for the first time in months. "Not anymore. Not for the next few months, anyway." He took a deep breath, feeling something shift inside him. Fear, excitement, hope. "I'm going undercover, Margaret, to save my son." What Charles didn't know, as he stared out at the glittering city, was that across town, a young woman named Elena Rodriguez was staring out her own window, a cracked pane in a cramped apartment, making a promise to her sleeping brother that would change all their lives forever. The game was about to begin, and neither father nor son had any idea just how much everything was about to change. 3 days later, Charles Whitmore stood in front of a mirror he'd never looked into before, the cracked, water-stained mirror in the employee locker room of Nathan's tech company, Innovative Solutions. He barely recognized himself. Gone was the $1,000 haircut, replaced by a simple trim from a $20 barbershop. His manicured hands were now rough, calloused from practice sessions where he'd actually learned to use cleaning equipment. The Armani suits had been traded for a gray janitor's uniform that bore the name Chuck on a faded patch. "Chuck Whitmore," he murmured to his reflection, testing how the name felt on his tongue. He'd kept his last name, a calculated risk, but common enough that it wouldn't raise suspicions. You can do this. The irony wasn't lost on him. He, Charles Whitmore, who commanded boardrooms and influenced stock markets with a single decision, was terrified of mopping floors and emptying trash cans. Margaret had been horrified when he'd explained his plan. Sir, this is madness. What if someone recognizes you? What if the board finds out? What if? What if my son dies alone because he can't trust anyone to love him? Charles had interrupted. Margaret, I've spent my entire life building this empire. But what good is it if I lose my son in the process? Now, as he adjusted his uniform and picked up his cleaning cart, Charles felt the weight of the lie he was about to live. But also something else, a strange sense of freedom. For the first time in decades, no one would expect anything from him except clean floors and empty wastebaskets. The elevator ride to the 15th floor felt eternal. This was Nathan's domain, the sleek, modern offices of Innovative Solutions, the tech company Nathan had built from the ground up, determined to make his own mark separate from the Whitmore fortune. Charles had invested, of course, but secretly, through shell companies. Nathan had no idea his father was his biggest silent partner. The elevator doors opened, and Charles stepped into a world he'd only seen in quarterly reports and business magazines. Floor-to-ceiling windows, open-concept workspaces, employees in jeans and hoodies hunched over glowing screens. It was everything his traditional corporate offices weren't: young, vibrant, alive. You must be the new guy. Charles turned to find a security guard, a large man with kind eyes and a name tag that read Miguel. Chuck Whitmore, Charles said, extending his hand. First day. Miguel's handshake was firm, honest. Miguel Santos. Been here 3 years. Good place to work, mostly. Management treats us fair. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. Just keep your head down around the big boss's son. Nathan Whitmore. He's not mean, exactly, but intense. Doesn't notice the little people, if you know what I mean. Charles felt a stab of pain. Is that how his son was seen? As someone who ignored the little people? But he simply nodded. Thanks for the heads up. Elena will show you the ropes. Miguel continued, pointing toward the reception desk. She's good people. Actually notices when we exist. Charles followed Miguel's gaze and saw her for the first time. Elena Rodriguez sat behind a sleek reception desk, but she was nothing like the polished, artificial women who typically graced corporate front desks. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she wore a simple blouse that had seen better days but was impeccably clean. What struck Charles immediately wasn't her beauty, though she was lovely in an unpretentious way, but her eyes. They were kind but tired, holding the weight of someone who'd seen too much struggle for her 25 years. She was arguing with someone on the phone, her voice firm but professional. I understand you need the payment, Mr. Henderson, but the insurance hasn't processed the claim yet. Yes, I know it's been 3 weeks. No, I can't make them move faster, but I promise I'll call them again this afternoon. She hung up, rubbed her temples, then looked up and smiled at Charles and Miguel. The transformation was instant. The worry lines smoothed, her shoulders straightened, and her smile was genuine. You must be Chuck, she said, standing and extending her hand. Elena Rodriguez. Welcome to the madhouse. Her handshake was confident, her eyes direct. Charles found himself genuinely smiling for the first time in days. Pleasure to meet you, miss. Just Elena. And Miguel's right. This is a good place to work. The pay is decent, the hours are reasonable, and… She paused, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. Between you and me, the coffee in the break room is terrible, but I keep a decent pot going at my desk. You're welcome to it. That's very kind of you. We look out for each other here. She sat back down, her fingers already flying over her keyboard. Miguel, can you show Chuck where everything is? I've got 17 fires to put out before lunch. As Miguel led him away, Charles glanced back at Elena. She was already back on the phone, her voice patient as she dealt with what sounded like another insurance company. Something about her brother's medication. Like I said, Miguel murmured, good people. Works 2 jobs to take care of her sick brother. Never complains, always has time to help. Not like some people around here. Charles filed that information away. Elena Rodriguez. 2 jobs. Sick brother. Kind eyes and terrible coffee in the break room. His first test came sooner than expected. As Miguel showed him the supply closets and explained the cleaning schedule, Charles heard a familiar voice echoing down the hallway. I don't care what the client says. The timeline is unrealistic. Either they give us 2 more weeks, or they find another company. Nathan. Charles felt his chest tighten as his son came into view, striding down the hallway with the confidence of someone who'd never doubted his place in the world. Designer jeans, expensive sneakers, a casual button-down that probably cost more than Chuck the janitor made in a week. Charles quickly busied himself with his cleaning cart, head down, heart pounding. This was it, the moment of truth. Nathan walked right past him without a glance, still talking on his phone. No, Jennifer, I don't want to hear about another woman who thinks I'm perfect husband material. We both know what that means. As Nathan disappeared into his corner office, Charles felt a familiar ache. His son was so close, yet completely unreachable. But for the first time in years, Charles had a plan. A way to help Nathan find what he'd found with Sarah, real love, untainted by money or status or expectation. Don't take it personal, Miguel said quietly. Like I said, he doesn't see us. Charles nodded, pushing his cart toward Nathan's office. Maybe it's time someone taught him how to look. That night, alone in his suddenly enormous penthouse, Charles sat at his kitchen table, not the formal dining room where he usually ate, but the actual kitchen table that hadn't been used in years. He'd made himself a sandwich, something he hadn't done since college, and was planning his next move. His phone buzzed with messages from Margaret, board members, business partners. All of them could wait. For the first time in his adult life, Charles Whitmore had something more important than money. He had a son to save, and maybe, just maybe, he'd save himself in the process. But across town, Elena Rodriguez was facing her own crisis, one that would test everything she believed about right and wrong. And tomorrow, their worlds would collide in ways none of them could predict. Elena's hands shook as she held the envelope. Her name was written across the front in elegant script, the kind of penmanship that screamed money and power. Inside, she knew, was either salvation or temptation. She wasn't sure which scared her more. The envelope had been waiting on her desk that morning, along with a single white rose and a note requesting a private meeting at lunch. The signature at the bottom made her stomach drop. Richard Blackwell, Senior Vice President of Blackwell Industries, Innovative Solutions' biggest competitor. She glanced around the bustling office, making sure no one was watching, then slipped the envelope into her purse. Whatever this was about, it couldn't be good. Elena, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. She turned to find Chuck, the new janitor, emptying her wastebasket. There was something about him that put her at ease. Maybe it was his kind eyes, or the way he actually listened when people talked, unlike most of the suit-and-tie crowd that flowed through these offices. Just one of those mornings, she said, forcing a smile. How are you settling in? Still figuring out which bathroom is which, Chuck replied with a self-deprecating laugh. But everyone's been kind. Especially you. That coffee you mentioned? It's keeping me alive. Elena felt some of her tension ease. Well, you're in luck. I just made a fresh pot. She poured him a cup in a disposable cup, her hands steadier now. Sugar? Cream. Black is fine. I like things simple. There was something in the way he said it that made Elena look at him more carefully. Chuck had to be in his 50s, with silver threading through his dark hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of stress rather than laughter. But his hands, she'd noticed them yesterday. They were too soft for someone who'd been doing manual labor for long. Elena. The sharp voice made her jump. Nathan Whitmore stood beside her desk, looking impeccable as always in his casual, expensive way. I need the Morrison files. And someone needs to do something about the printer in conference room B. It's been jamming for 3 days. She bit back her first response, that she'd already submitted 3 work requests for the printer and ordered the Morrison files from archives twice. Instead, she smiled professionally. I'll handle both right away, Mr. Whitmore. Nathan nodded curtly and started to walk away, then stopped. His gaze fell on Chuck, who was quietly sipping his coffee and organizing his cleaning supplies. You're new, Nathan said. It wasn't a question. Chuck looked up, and Elena was surprised to see no trace of intimidation in his eyes. Most employees turned nervous around Nathan, not because he was cruel, but because he had that billionaire's son energy that made people feel small. Yes, sir. Chuck Whitmore. No relation, Chuck added with a slight smile. Nathan's eyebrows rose. Whitmore. Common name. Like Smith or Jones. Chuck's tone was easy, conversational. though I bet you get that question a lot. For the first time since Elena had worked there, she saw Nathan look genuinely surprised. People didn't usually joke with him. They certainly didn't treat him like he was just another person. Actually, yes, Nathan said slowly. More than you'd think. Must be exhausting, Chuck said simply. Living up to other people's expectations of what a name should mean. Elena felt the air in the room shift. Nathan's expression changed, the corporate mask slipping for just a moment to reveal something raw underneath. The printer, Nathan said finally, his walls slamming back up. Conference room B. He walked away, but Elena noticed he glanced back once at Chuck, who had returned to his cleaning as if nothing had happened. That was interesting, Elena murmured. Chuck looked up. What was? You just treated Nathan Whitmore like a regular person. Isn't he? Chuck asked, and there was something in his voice, a sadness, maybe, that made Elena study his face. Most people don't think so. She lowered her voice. Between you and me, I think that's part of his problem. Everyone either wants something from him or is afraid of him. Must be lonely. Chuck was quiet for a long moment. Yeah, he said finally. I imagine it would be. Their conversation was interrupted by Elena's phone buzzing. A text from an unknown number. Lunch. Cafe Luna. 1 o'clock. Come alone. RB. Elena's blood ran cold. Richard Blackwell. She'd hoped that maybe, somehow, she could avoid whatever this was. But the text made it clear, this wasn't a request. I have to go, she said suddenly, grabbing her purse and jacket. Elena, wait. Chuck's voice stopped her. Are you in some kind of trouble? The concern in his voice was so genuine that Elena almost broke down right there. When was the last time someone had asked if she was okay and really meant it? It's complicated, she said. Most things worth dealing with are. Elena looked at this man she'd known for exactly 2 days, and for reasons she couldn't explain, she found herself trusting him. My brother is sick. Really sick. The treatments are expensive, and our insurance. She shook her head. Let's just say the system isn't designed for people like us. Chuck nodded slowly. And someone's offering to help, but there are strings attached. How did you? I've lived long enough to recognize that look, Chuck said. The look of someone being offered a deal they can't afford to refuse, but can't afford to accept either. Elena stared at him. Chuck the janitor was full of surprises. Whatever it is, Chuck continued, whatever they're asking you to do, make sure you can live with it. Because the money won't matter if you can't look at yourself in the mirror. Elena nodded, her throat tight. I have to go. She made it halfway to the elevator before she heard Chuck call her name. She turned to find him standing by his cleaning cart, looking older and sadder than she'd noticed before. Elena, he said, sometimes the right thing and the easy thing are complete opposites. But the right thing, it's the only thing that lets you sleep at night. An hour later, Elena sat across from Richard Blackwell in a dimly lit corner booth at Cafe Luna, trying not to throw up. Blackwell was everything she'd expected, smooth, expensive, and utterly without conscience. He looked like he bought and sold people for breakfast. Miss Rodriguez, he said, sliding a thick envelope across the table. I hope you'll forgive the dramatic presentation, but I believe in being direct. Elena didn't touch the envelope. What do you want? Nathan Whitmore is developing something revolutionary. A new software platform that could change everything. My sources tell me it's called Project Genesis. Elena's heart sank. She knew about Project Genesis. Nathan had been working on it for months, staying late, obsessing over every detail. It was his baby, his chance to prove he was more than just his father's son. I wouldn't know anything about that, she said carefully. Blackwell smiled like a shark. Of course not. You're just a receptionist. But receptionists see everything, don't they? They handle the files, the correspondence, the schedules. He tapped the envelope. There's $50,000 in there. Cash. Enough to pay for your brother's treatments, and then some. Elena's vision blurred. $50,000. Miguel's cancer treatments. The experimental therapy the doctors said might save his life. The medications that cost more than she made in 6 months. All of it, solved with one envelope. All I need, Blackwell continued, is information. Progress reports. Technical specifications. Timeline updates. Nothing that would hurt anyone, really. Just business intelligence. That's corporate espionage, Elena whispered. That's business. Blackwell's voice was cold now. Your brother has what? 6 months without treatment? 3 with the standard care he's getting now? This experimental therapy could give him years, Elena. Maybe a full life. Elena thought of Miguel, barely 23 years old, wasting away in their tiny apartment, pretending to be strong for her sake. She thought of the medical bills piling up, the insurance denials, the way he tried to hide his pain when the medications wore off. She thought of Chuck's words, "Sometimes the right thing and the easy thing are complete opposites." "I need time to think," she said. Blackwell slid a business card across the table. "You have 48 hours. After that, I find someone else, and this offer disappears." Elena stood on shaking legs, leaving the envelope on the table. "I can't. I won't be bought. Everyone has a price, Miss Rodriguez. The only question is whether you'll accept it before it's too late to help the people you love." Elena fled the cafe, Blackwell's laughter following her into the street. She made it back to the office bathroom before she broke down completely, sobbing into her hands as the weight of the decision crushed down on her. Betray Nathan, betray everything she believed in, and save Miguel's life. Or keep her integrity and watch her little brother die. She was still crying when she heard a gentle knock on the bathroom door. "Elena? It's Chuck. Miguel from security is worried about you." She wiped her face and opened the door. Chuck took one look at her, and his expression softened with a compassion that reminded her, suddenly, of her father. "Want to talk about it?" he asked. And despite every instinct telling her to keep her problems to herself, Elena found herself nodding. Because sometimes, when the world is crashing down around you, you need someone to listen. Even if that someone is a janitor you've known for 2 days. Even if that someone might be the only person who can help you find your way back to who you want to be. Chuck listened without judgment as Elena poured out her story in whispered fragments. They sat on a bench in the small employee courtyard behind the building, hidden from the corporate bustle inside. Elena told him about Miguel, how he'd raised her after their parents died in a car accident when she was 16, how he'd worked 3 jobs to put her through community college, how the cancer diagnosis had come like a lightning strike, devastating and sudden. "He's all I have left," Elena said, her voice barely audible. "And I'm failing him." Chuck was quiet for a long moment, watching her with those surprisingly perceptive eyes. "You're not failing anyone. You're in an impossible situation. But that man, Blackwell, he's right, isn't he? I could save Miguel. All I'd have to do is..." She couldn't say it out loud. "Betray someone who trusts you." Chuck finished gently. Elena nodded, tears streaming down her face. "What kind of person does that make me? That I'm even considering it?" "Human," Chuck said simply. "It makes you human. Love makes us consider impossible things." He paused, seeming to weigh his words. "Can I tell you something?" Elena nodded. "I had a son once. Still do, actually, but..." Chuck stared off into the distance. "I made a lot of mistakes as a father. Thought I could protect him by giving him everything money could buy. But what I really did was build walls around him. Made it impossible for him to trust anyone's motives. What happened? He grew up believing that everyone who claimed to care about him was really after something else. And maybe he wasn't wrong." Chuck's voice was heavy with regret. "Money changes how people see you. It changes how you see yourself." Elena studied Chuck's profile. There was something in his voice, a weight that suggested he knew more about money and its complications than a janitor should. "But Nathan seems successful," she said carefully. "He built this company himself." Chuck's laugh was bitter. Did he? Or did he have advantages he didn't even know about? Silent partners, family connections, doors that opened because of his last name. He shook his head. "Sometimes the help we think we don't want is the only reason we succeed." There was something in Chuck's tone that made Elena look at him more carefully. "You seem to know a lot about Nathan Whitmore." Chuck was quiet for a long moment. "I've been watching him, trying to understand him." He turned to face Elena. "Did you know he volunteers at a homeless shelter on weekends? Doesn't tell anyone, doesn't use his real name. Just shows up and serves food, talks to people like they matter." Elena blinked in surprise. "Nathan does that. Every Saturday morning for the past 2 years. I followed him once." Chuck smiled slightly. "He's not the cold corporate prince everyone thinks he is. He's just lost, looking for something real in a world full of people who want to use him." "How do you know all this?" Chuck hesitated, and Elena could see him weighing how much to reveal. "Let's just say I have reasons to be interested in Nathan Whitmore's happiness." Before Elena could ask what he meant, her phone rang. The caller ID made her blood freeze. "Miguel." "Elena." Her brother's voice was weak, strained. "I'm at the hospital. I collapsed at work, and they're saying..." His voice broke. The cancer spread. They want to start the aggressive treatment immediately, but the insurance. Elena's world tilted. I'm coming. Right now. She hung up and looked at Chuck with wild, desperate eyes. I have to go. Miguel's, the cancer. She couldn't form coherent sentences. Chuck stood immediately. Go. I'll cover for you here. But you don't understand. If Miguel needs the treatment now, if insurance won't cover it. Elena's voice rose, panic setting in. That envelope. Blackwell's offer. It might be the only way. Chuck gripped her shoulders gently but firmly. Elena, listen to me. There are other ways. Always. Don't make a decision like this when you're scared and desperate. Like what? Pray for a miracle? Miguel is dying, Chuck. Actually dying. Tears streamed down her face. And I can save him. All I have to do is betray someone I barely know to save someone I love more than life itself. Chuck's face went through a series of emotions. Pain, understanding, and something that looked almost like recognition. What if there was another way? What if I told you someone was willing to help? No strings attached. Who? You. Elena laughed bitterly. No offense, Chuck, but you're a janitor. Miguel's treatment costs more than we both make in a year. Chuck was quiet for a moment, then pulled out his phone. Go to your brother. Be with him. I'm going to make some calls. Chuck, you can't. Trust me, he said, and there was something in his voice, an authority that seemed completely at odds with his janitor's uniform. Just trust me. And Elena? Don't call Blackwell. Not yet. Give me 12 hours. Elena stared at him, confusion and hope warring in her chest. Why are you helping me? You barely know me. Chuck's smile was sad and complicated. Because sometimes we get a chance to do the right thing, even if we've spent years doing the wrong ones. Because you're a good person in an impossible situation, and good people deserve help. He paused. And because someone I care about very much needs to see that there are still people in this world worth trusting. Elena wanted to ask more questions, but Miguel was waiting. She grabbed her purse and ran for the elevator, leaving Chuck standing in the courtyard with his phone pressed to his ear. What she didn't see was the way Chuck's entire demeanor changed the moment she was gone. The uncertain, humble janitor disappeared, replaced by someone who was clearly used to giving orders and having them followed. Margaret, he said into his phone. I need you to call Dr. Harrison at Mount Sinai. Yes, the oncologist. Tell him Charles Whitmore needs a favor. Meanwhile, 3 floors up, Nathan sat in his office staring at the same lines of code he'd been wrestling with for hours. Project Genesis was more than just software to him. It was his attempt to prove that he could create something meaningful, something that would help people, without relying on his father's money or influence. But lately, he'd been distracted. There was something about the new janitor that bothered him. Not bothered exactly. Intrigued, maybe. Chuck had looked at him like he was a person, not a walking trust fund. When was the last time that had happened? And then there was Elena. Nathan had noticed her long before today. How could he not? She was beautiful, but more than that, she was real. She didn't flutter around him like most women, didn't laugh too loudly at his jokes, or find excuses to touch his arm. She treated him with professional courtesy and nothing more, which was exactly why he'd never asked her out. Elena Rodriguez was everything Nathan thought he wanted, genuine, kind, unimpressed by wealth. But how could he be sure? Every woman he'd ever trusted had eventually revealed ulterior motives. Even Victoria, who'd seemed so different, had been photographing his financial information. His phone rang, interrupting his brooding. Nathan Whitmore. Mr. Whitmore, this is Dr. Elizabeth Harrison from Mount Sinai Medical Center. I understand you have an employee, Elena Rodriguez, whose brother is a patient of mine. Nathan frowned. I'm sorry, I don't understand. Why are you calling me? Well, sir, I received a call about Miguel Rodriguez's treatment being covered by your company's medical assistance program. I wanted to confirm the authorization before we begin the experimental therapy. Our medical assistance program? Nathan pulled up his computer. Dr. Harrison, I think there's been some mistake. We don't have a program like that. There was a pause. Oh, well, then I'm not sure. The caller was very specific. Said he was calling on behalf of Nathan Whitmore of Innovative Solutions, authorizing treatment for Elena Rodriguez's brother under your company's charitable medical fund. Nathan's mind raced. Someone had impersonated him, used his name to authorize medical treatment? But who? And why would they care about Elena's brother? Dr. Harrison, can you tell me who called? I'm sorry, I don't have that information. But the authorization came with a very specific patient advocate number and what appeared to be a valid corporate account. Should I not proceed with the treatment? Nathan thought about Elena's face that morning, the worry she'd tried to hide, the phone call that had made her go pale. He thought about her kindness, the way she'd welcomed Chuck with genuine warmth, the coffee she shared, and the smile she gave freely to everyone except him. No, he said finally. Proceed with the treatment. Send all bills to my personal attention. Sir, you heard correctly. Whatever Miguel Rodriguez needs, authorize it. Send everything to me directly. Nathan hung up and leaned back in his chair. Someone was playing games, using his name and his company. But whoever it was had just done something Nathan had been too cautious, too suspicious, too afraid to do himself. They'd helped Elena. And now Nathan had to figure out who was pulling the strings behind the scenes of his own life. Because something told him this was just the beginning. Down in the courtyard, Chuck ended his call with Margaret and allowed himself a small smile. Phase 1 complete. Elena's brother would get the treatment he needed, and Nathan would start to see Elena differently. Not as a potential threat to his fortune, but as someone worth protecting. But Chuck's satisfaction was short-lived. Because across town, Richard Blackwell had just learned that his $50,000 offer had been trumped by someone with much deeper pockets. And Richard Blackwell didn't like to lose. The game was about to get much more dangerous. Elena's world had turned upside down in the space of 4 hours. One moment Miguel was dying, insurance was refusing coverage, and she was contemplating corporate espionage. The next, Dr. Harrison was explaining that Miguel's treatment had been fully authorized by something called the Innovative Solutions Medical Assistance Program, a program Elena had never heard of. I don't understand, Elena said for the third time, sitting beside Miguel's hospital bed as nurses prepared him for the first round of experimental therapy. Nathan Whitmore authorized this? Himself? Dr. Harrison nodded, checking Miguel's chart. The call came directly to my office. Very official, very thorough. Your brother will receive the full course of treatment. The new immunotherapy protocol, supportive care, everything. It's a comprehensive program. Miguel squeezed Elena's hand weakly. Sis, I don't care who authorized it. I'm just grateful someone did. But Elena cared. She cared because it didn't make sense. Nathan barely acknowledged her existence at work. Why would he suddenly decide to pay for her brother's cancer treatment? The cost had to be astronomical. I need to make a phone call, she told Miguel, kissing his forehead. I'll be right back. Outside Miguel's room, Elena dialed Chuck's number. He answered on the first ring. How's your brother? He asked without preamble. Chuck, what did you do? Elena's voice was shaky. Nathan Whitmore somehow authorized Miguel's treatment. Full coverage for experimental therapy. How is that possible? There was a long pause. Maybe Nathan Whitmore is a better man than people give him credit for. That's not an answer. Chuck, this is tens of thousands of dollars. People don't just do that for employees they barely know. What did you do? I made a phone call, Chuck said carefully, to someone who cares about doing the right thing. Elena's suspicion crystallized into certainty. You're not just a janitor, are you? Another pause, longer this time. Elena, does it matter? Your brother is getting the treatment he needs. That's what's important. It matters because I don't like being lied to. It matters because someone is playing games with my life, and I want to know who and why. Elena's voice rose. Who are you, Chuck? I'm someone who cares about your happiness, Chuck said quietly, and someone who thinks you might be exactly what Nathan Whitmore needs in his life. The line went dead. Elena stared at her phone, pieces of a puzzle clicking together in her mind. Chuck's interest in Nathan, his knowledge of Nathan's volunteer work, his soft hands and expensive vocabulary, the way he'd spoken about money and its complications like someone who'd lived with both, and his last name, Whitmore. No relation, he'd said when Nathan had questioned it. But what if that was another lie? Elena's hands trembled as she Googled Charles Whitmore Billionaire on her phone. The images that populated made her legs go weak. There he was, Chuck the janitor, in a $1,000 suit, shaking hands with politicians and celebrities, standing beside Nathan at various corporate events. Charles Whitmore, Nathan's father, the billionaire who'd been mysteriously absent from his company for the past few weeks, according to the business gossip sites. Elena sank into a waiting room chair, her mind reeling. Nathan's father had been mopping floors in his son's company, watching, listening, and somehow, he'd orchestrated Miguel's treatment. But why? Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Meet me tonight. Warehouse District, 1247 Industrial Way. 11 p.m. Come alone, or your brother's treatment stops immediately. R.B. Richard Blackwell. Elena's blood went cold. Somehow, he'd found out about Miguel's treatment. And now he was playing a different game entirely. Elena looked back toward Miguel's room, where her brother was finally getting the help he needed, then at her phone screen with its threatening message. The web of lies and manipulation was tightening around her, and she was trapped in the middle. She needed help, but the only person who'd offered to help her had been lying about his identity from the moment they met. Back at Innovative Solutions, Nathan was having his own crisis of identity. He'd spent the afternoon trying to trace the mysterious phone call about Elena's brother, but every lead hit a dead end. The corporate account that had been referenced didn't exist in any system he could access. The patient advocate number was legitimate, but led to a third-party service that claimed client confidentiality. Someone with serious resources and connections had made Miguel Rodriguez's treatment happen. Someone who wanted to remain anonymous. Someone who cared enough about Elena to spend a fortune helping her. Nathan found himself standing outside the reception area, watching Elena's empty desk. She'd left in a panic that morning, and he'd been thinking about her ever since. Not just about her beauty or her kindness, but about the worry in her eyes, the way she'd tried to hide her fear. When was the last time he'd cared about someone else's pain more than his own problems? She's at the hospital with her brother. Nathan turned to find Chuck behind him, emptying wastebaskets with methodical precision. Her brother? Nathan asked. Miguel, 23 years old, cancer patient. She's been working 2 jobs trying to pay for his treatment. Chuck's voice was carefully neutral. Good thing someone stepped up to help. Nathan studied the janitor's face. You seem to know a lot about Elena's personal situation. People talk to the cleaning crew. We're invisible, so we hear things. Chuck met Nathan's eyes steadily. Elena's special. The kind of person who'd give up everything for someone she loves. Rare quality these days. Is it? Nathan's voice was bitter. In my experience, everyone's looking for an angle. Something to gain. Chuck stopped cleaning and looked at Nathan directly. What if you're wrong? What if there are still people in the world who care about others without expecting anything in return? Like who? Like Elena. She's never asked you for anything, has she? Never tried to get your attention or leverage her position for personal gain. Nathan was quiet, thinking. Chuck was right. Elena had been nothing but professional, even distant. If she'd wanted something from him, she'd had plenty of opportunities to ask. Why are you telling me this? Nathan asked. Chuck resumed his cleaning. Because sometimes we miss what's right in front of us. And sometimes, by the time we realize what we've lost, it's too late to fix it. There was something in Chuck's voice, a deep sadness that spoke of personal experience. Nathan found himself really looking at the janitor for the first time. There was something familiar about his eyes, something that reminded Nathan of. His phone rang, interrupting the thought. Nathan Whitmore. Mr. Whitmore, this is hospital security at Mount Sinai. We have Elena Rodriguez here asking to speak with you about her brother's treatment authorization. She seems quite upset. Nathan's chest tightened. Is she all right? She's fine, sir, but she's demanding to know who really authorized the treatment. She seems to think there's some kind of conspiracy involved. Nathan looked at Chuck, who had gone very still. Tell her I'll be right there. He hung up and started toward the elevator, then stopped. Chuck. Yes, sir. If someone you cared about was in trouble, what would you do? Even if helping them might hurt you. Chuck's smile was sad and knowing. I'd help them anyway. Because that's what love is, putting someone else's happiness before your own safety. Nathan nodded and headed for the elevator. He didn't see Chuck pull out his phone the moment the doors closed. Margaret, Chuck said quietly. We have a problem. Elena's figured out something's not right, and Blackwell's making moves. I need you to trace any communications between Richard Blackwell and Elena Rodriguez. And Margaret? It's time to activate the security team. Things are about to get dangerous. At Mount Sinai Hospital, Elena paced the hallway outside Miguel's room like a caged animal. The pieces were falling into place, and she didn't like the picture they were forming. Someone was manipulating her life, using her brother as leverage, and she was tired of being a pawn in other people's games. When Nathan stepped off the elevator, Elena was ready for him. We need to talk, she said without preamble. About your company's medical assistance program that doesn't exist. About your father who's been pretending to be a janitor. About the fact that someone's been playing puppet master with my life. Nathan's face went pale. My father? What are you talking about? Chuck Whitmore. Ring any bells? Because apparently, no relation was just another lie in a web of lies that I'm stuck in the middle of. Nathan stared at her, his mind racing. Chuck. Charles. His father's given name was Charles, but he'd never gone by Chuck. Never. But the timing, the mysterious absence from his company, the intimate knowledge of Nathan's life. Oh God, Nathan whispered. He wouldn't. He couldn't. He did, Elena said firmly. Your father has been mopping floors and watching you work, probably reporting back to, I don't even know who. And somehow, he arranged Miguel's treatment, which means he's been manipulating both of us. Nathan felt his world tilt. Everything Chuck had said, every piece of advice, every moment of connection, it had all been his father, orchestrating from the shadows. Again, Elena, I swear to you, I had no idea. It doesn't matter. Elena cut him off. What matters is that someone's been lying to both of us. And now I'm getting threatening messages from Richard Blackwell. And I don't know who to trust or what to do. Blackwell? What does he want? Elena pulled out her phone and showed Nathan the text message. His face darkened as he read it. You're not going, Nathan said immediately. I have to. If I don't, he'll stop Miguel's treatment. And I can't. I won't let my brother die because I got caught up in some billionaire family drama. Nathan grabbed her shoulders gently. Elena, listen to me. Blackwell is dangerous. This isn't just corporate espionage anymore. This is personal. He's using your brother to get to me. Then what do you suggest? Because in about 6 hours, I have to be at that warehouse, or everything we've done to save Miguel is meaningless. Nathan was quiet for a moment, his mind working. We go together, but not alone, and not unprepared. Elena, I know you have no reason to trust me. My father's been lying to both of us, and I'm probably the last person you want to depend on right now. But Blackwell isn't just after information, he's after revenge. Against me, against my family. And he's using you to get it. Elena studied Nathan's face. She saw something there she'd never noticed before. Not the corporate mask or the billionaire's son persona, but genuine concern. Fear, even. For her. Why do you care? She asked quietly. Really, why does this matter to you? Nathan was quiet for a long moment. Because my father was right about one thing. You're special, Elena. You're kind and honest and real in a world full of people who pretend to be things they're not. And if something happens to you because of my family's money and power, he shook his head. I couldn't live with that. Elena felt something shift in her chest. This wasn't the Nathan Whitmore everyone else saw, the cold, distant CEO. This was someone scared and vulnerable and trying to do the right thing. Okay, she said finally. We do this together. But Nathan, after tonight, I want the truth. All of it. About your father, about why he's been pretending to be Chuck, about what he's really trying to accomplish. Nathan nodded. After tonight, I promise, no more lies. Neither of them noticed the figure watching from the stairwell. Chuck, who had followed Nathan to the hospital and overheard their entire conversation. His carefully constructed plan was falling apart. His son was walking into danger, and the woman he'd hoped would save Nathan was now caught in the crossfire. Charles Whitmore had spent his entire adult life being in control, manipulating situations from behind the scenes. But tonight, for the first time in decades, he was powerless. And the two people he cared about most in the world were about to walk into a trap. He pulled out his phone and made a call he'd hoped never to make. This is Charles Whitmore. I need to speak to Director Morrison at the FBI. Tell him it's about Richard Blackwell, and it can't wait. The game was no longer about finding Nathan a wife. It was about keeping everyone alive long enough for love to have a chance. The warehouse district at 11 p.m. was a maze of shadows and empty promises. Elena sat in Nathan's car, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles were white. Through the windshield, she could see the building Blackwell had specified, 1247 Industrial Way, a hulking structure that looked like it had been abandoned for years. The FBI will be in position in 10 minutes, Nathan said quietly, checking his phone. My father, Chuck, he's called in favors. Apparently, Blackwell's been under investigation for industrial espionage for months. Elena turned to look at Nathan. In the dim light of the car, he looked younger, more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. How are you handling all this? Finding out your father's been lying to you. Nathan's laugh was bitter. Which lie are you referring to? The fact that he's been pretending to be a janitor? Or the fact that he's apparently been running covert operations behind my back for weeks? Maybe both. Nathan was quiet for a moment, staring out at the warehouse. I'm angry. Furious, actually. But also, he paused, searching for words. Also grateful, I think. For the first time in years, my father did something that wasn't about protecting me or controlling my life. He did something to help someone else. To help you. Elena felt her chest tighten. Nathan, about your father. He cares about you, Nathan interrupted. Whatever his reasons for this whole charade, he genuinely cares about your happiness. I could see it in his eyes when he talked about you. And what about you? Elena asked quietly. Do you care about my happiness? Nathan turned to look at her, and Elena saw something in his expression that made her breath catch. Elena, I've spent the last 3 years convinced that every woman who showed interest in me was after my money. I built walls so high that I couldn't see over them anymore. And now I'm sitting in a car with a woman who's never asked me for anything, who's risking her life to protect her brother, who treated my father with kindness when she thought he was just a janitor. Nathan's voice was soft, and I'm realizing that maybe the problem wasn't other people. Maybe the problem was me. Elena stared at him. Nathan. Her phone buzzed. A text from Blackwell. Time's up. Come in alone, or the deal's off. We should go, Elena said, but Nathan caught her hand. Elena, wait. Before we go in there, I need you to know something. Nathan's eyes were intense, vulnerable. Whatever happens tonight, these last few days, getting to know you, seeing how you treat people, watching you fight for your brother, it's changed something in me. You've changed something in me. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. Nathan, I know this isn't the time or place, and I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear this from right now. But Elena, the sharp crack of a gunshot echoed through the night, and both their heads snapped toward the warehouse. Through a broken window, they could see lights and movement. That wasn't part of the plan, Nathan said grimly, reaching for his phone. Before he could dial, Elena's phone rang. Blackwell's voice was cold and furious when she answered. Miss Rodriguez, it seems your boyfriend decided to bring friends to our little meeting. That was unwise. We're not inside yet, Elena said quickly. Whatever you heard. I heard the FBI setting up a perimeter around my building. Did you really think I wouldn't have people watching? Blackwell's laugh was ugly. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to come inside, alone, and we're going to have our original conversation. Or I'm going to disappear, your brother's treatment gets canceled, and Nathan Whitmore learns what it feels like to lose someone he cares about. The line went dead. Elena stared at her phone, then at Nathan. He knows about the FBI, she said. He wants me to come in alone, or he'll hurt you. And Miguel. Elena, no? We stick to the plan. The FBI. The FBI can't protect Miguel if Blackwell disappears. And they can't guarantee he won't hurt you out of spite. Elena was already reaching for the door handle. I have to go in. Nathan grabbed her arm. Elena, this is insane. Blackwell is desperate and cornered. There's no telling what he'll do. Then I guess we're about to find out. Elena looked at Nathan one more time, memorizing his face. Nathan, if something happens, nothing's going to happen. I won't let it. Elena smiled sadly. You can't control everything, Nathan. Sometimes you have to trust that people will make the right choice, even when it's dangerous. She kissed him quickly, softly, and then she was out of the car and walking toward the warehouse before Nathan could stop her. Inside the building, Elena found herself in a maze of corridors and empty rooms. The sound of her footsteps echoed eerily in the darkness. She followed the faint glow of light deeper into the building, her heart hammering against her ribs. She found Blackwell in what had once been an office, sitting behind a metal desk like he was conducting a normal business meeting. But his eyes were wild, desperate, and Elena could see the sweat beading on his forehead despite the cold. Miss Rodriguez, thank you for coming. Let's get this over with, Elena said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. What do you want? The same thing I wanted this afternoon. Information about Project Genesis. Technical specifications, timeline, anything that will give me an edge over Nathan Whitmore. And if I refuse? Blackwell smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Then your brother's treatment stops immediately. His cancer returns. He dies, and you spend the rest of your life knowing you could have saved him. Elena felt something harden inside her chest. You know what, Mr. Blackwell? I've spent the last few days learning some hard truths about myself and the people around me. And one of those truths is that some things are more important than survival. Blackwell's expression darkened. Miss Rodriguez, I won't betray Nathan, Elena said firmly. Not for money, not for Miguel's treatment, not even to save my own life. Because that's not who I am. And Miguel, the brother you're threatening, he'd rather die than know I'd sold my soul to save him. Elena turned to walk away, but Blackwell's voice stopped her. Then I guess we're done here. She heard the click of a gun being cocked. Turn around, Miss Rodriguez. Elena's blood went cold, but she turned slowly. Blackwell was standing now, pointing a pistol at her chest. You know what your problem is? Blackwell said conversationally. You think the world rewards good people. You think integrity matters more than results. But you're wrong. The world belongs to people like me. People willing to do whatever it takes to win. Maybe, Elena said quietly. But I'd rather lose as myself than win as you. Blackwell's finger tightened on the trigger. Goodbye, Miss Rodriguez. The shot was deafeningly loud in the enclosed space, but Elena was still standing. Blackwell, however, was on the ground, clutching his shoulder and screaming. Behind him stood Chuck, Charles Whitmore, holding a smoking gun and looking absolutely furious. Hello, Richard, Charles said calmly. We need to talk. Elena stared at him. Gone was any pretense of being a janitor. This was Charles Whitmore, billionaire, in full command mode. He was terrifying and magnificent at the same time. Elena, are you hurt? Charles asked, never taking his eyes off Blackwell. No, how did you, the FBI, are handling the perimeter. But some things require a more personal touch. Charles kicked Blackwell's gun away from him. Richard here has been targeting my family for months. Industrial espionage, corporate sabotage, and now attempted murder. That's going to be a problem. Nathan burst through the door at that moment, followed by several FBI agents. He took in the scene. Elena standing in shock, Blackwell bleeding on the floor, his father holding a gun, and rushed to Elena's side. Are you okay? Are you hurt? Elena let Nathan wrap his arms around her, finally allowing herself to feel the fear she'd been holding back. I'm okay. Your father, he saved my life. Nathan looked over at Charles, and Elena saw something pass between father and son. Not forgiveness, exactly, but understanding. Thank you, Nathan said quietly. Charles nodded, then holstered his weapon as the FBI agents moved in to arrest Blackwell. We'll talk later. All of us. There are things that need to be said. As the FBI led Blackwell away, he looked back at Elena with pure hatred. This isn't over, he snarled. The Whitmores destroyed my father's company 20 years ago. I'll destroy them if it's the last thing I do. It will be, Charles said coldly. Because you're going to prison for a very long time. An hour later, Elena sat in the hospital cafeteria with Nathan and Charles, trying to process everything that had happened. Miguel was stable, his treatment was secure, and Blackwell was in custody. But the emotional aftermath was just beginning. I owe you both an apology, Charles said finally. Elena, I lied to you from the moment we met. I manipulated your situation and used your kindness for my own purposes. Elena studied his face. Why? What were you trying to accomplish? Charles glanced at Nathan, then back at Elena. I was trying to find someone who could love my son for who he is, not what he has. Someone genuine, kind, real. He paused. I was trying to give Nathan what I had with his mother. By lying and manipulating? Nathan's voice was controlled, but Elena could hear the hurt underneath. By removing the barriers that money creates, Charles replied. Nathan, you've spent years convinced that every woman who showed interest in you was after your fortune. And maybe some of them were. But how would you ever know for sure if you couldn't separate Nathan the person from Nathan the billionaire's son? Elena looked between father and son, seeing the same pain in both their faces. So you became Chuck the janitor. And I watched you treat my son like a human being. I saw you challenge him, ignore his status, refuse to be impressed by his wealth. Charles smiled slightly. I saw you fall in love with Nathan, not his bank account. Elena felt her cheeks burn. I never said. You didn't have to, Charles said gently. It was written all over your face every time you looked at him, just like it's written all over his face when he looks at you. Elena turned to Nathan, who was staring at her with an expression of wonder and hope. Is that true? Nathan asked quietly. Elena, could you? Yes, Elena said simply. I love you, Nathan. Not your money, not your company, not your last name. Just you. The man who volunteers at homeless shelters and stays late to perfect his projects and treats people with respect even when he's afraid they're trying to use him. Nathan reached for her hands. Elena, I love you too. I think I started falling for you the first day you smiled at Chuck and offered him coffee. You have this way of seeing people, really seeing them. That makes everyone around you want to be better. Charles cleared his throat. If I may interrupt this touching moment, there's one more thing we need to discuss. Nathan and Elena turned to him. Elena, your brother's treatment is secure, regardless of what happens between you and Nathan. That's not conditional on anything. It's just the right thing to do. Charles paused. But I hope you'll consider staying in Nathan's life, and maybe giving an old man a chance to earn your forgiveness. Elena looked at Charles, really looked at him. She saw the regret in his eyes, the love for his son, the desperate hope that his manipulations might actually have led to something good. Chuck, she said finally, and Charles blinked in surprise at the name. You lied to me, manipulated me, and put me in danger. But you also saved my brother's life, protected your son, and helped me find something I thought I'd never have. She stood up and walked around the table, then hugged Charles tightly. Thank you, she whispered. For all of it. Charles's eyes filled with tears as he hugged her back. Welcome to the family, he said softly. Nathan stood and joined the embrace, and for the first time in years, Charles Whitmore felt like he'd gotten something right. 3 months later, Elena walked up the steps of the Whitmore estate, carrying a thermos of coffee and wearing a simple sundress. She found Nathan and Charles on the back terrace, working side by side on Charles's latest project, a nonprofit foundation that would provide medical assistance to families like Elena's. Gentlemen, she said, setting the coffee down between them. How's the world saving going? Nathan looked up and smiled, the kind of smile that had taken Elena's breath away the first time she'd seen it, back when she'd thought Charles was just a janitor who understood loneliness. Better now that you're here, Nathan said, pulling her into his arms. Elena kissed him softly, then looked over at Charles, who was pretending to study his paperwork but was obviously watching them with satisfaction. Chuck, Elena said, and Charles looked up with a grin. Any chance you want to help me make lunch? I'm thinking grilled cheese and tomato soup. Simple food for simple people? Charles asked, echoing something he'd said months ago in his janitor disguise. The best kind, Elena replied. As they walked into the house together, Nathan with his arm around Elena, Charles holding the door for both of them. Elena thought about how much had changed. Miguel was in remission, stronger every day. Nathan had learned to trust again. Charles had found a way to be a father instead of just a provider. And Elena had learned that sometimes the most unexpected disguises reveal the most important truths. Love, it turned out, was the only thing that couldn't be faked, bought, or manipulated. It could only be recognized, nurtured, and chosen, again and again, by people brave enough to be real with each other. In the kitchen, as Elena taught Charles how to make grilled cheese and Nathan told them both about his morning at the homeless shelter, the afternoon light streamed through the windows and illuminated something beautiful and simple and true. A family, built not on money or status or expectation, but on the radical decision to love each other exactly as they were. And in that moment, Elena knew that Chuck the janitor had been right about one thing. Sometimes love finds you in the most unexpected places, wearing the most unlikely disguises, when you're brave enough to see past the surface to the heart underneath. If you made it to the end, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. It truly means the world to us. See you in the next one.